Good morning, Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty, 40 years of serving clients here in Silicon Valley. We're here today to talk about the real estate market. Here are some URLs. We'll get back to those later in the meeting. We're going to start off with a new graph. These are 4 summary slides. So that the goal here is that in a few minutes, I can give you what you need to know about what's happened in the real estate market in the past week. So what you're showing here is the available inventory is in the blue line, so right here, and we're comparing it as a percentage to the 5-year median. So if we're having an absolute normal year, it would be right on the yellow line, and that's true for all 3 data sets. So I'm comparing this current year's data to the 5-year median of available inventory. My available inventory are properties that are available for a buyer to make an offer, no existing contract on them. And then the gray line is the number of new listings in the past week. So you can see both the total inventory and the new listings is just above where you'd expect it to be. The number of offers is significantly above. It's about 25% above where you'd expect it to be. So when you have 25% more demand than you have normally, and you have normal inventory, that is why everybody's saying there's a lack of inventory. And there's also this is for the macro data. So it's Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, condos and townhouses, and single families. So you're blending everything together. There's a little bit more in the surplus and less demand in the condo townhouse than there is in the single family. But that's the disadvantage when you look at statistics. You don't know what's happening in any given micro market area. So that's what's happened on the raw data. So the single most important characteristic of the real estate market, in my opinion, is DUI. DUI stands for days of unsold inventory. That's how rapidly would we sell out all the existing inventory at the existing rate of sales. I use 2 different benchmarks for the speed, for the rate of sales. When we're talking about macro data, I typically just use 1 week. What's happening to sales in this past week? How quickly, based on the last week's activity, we would sell everything. And that's this blue line right here. And you can see we're below the 5-year median, which is still the yellow line. So right now we're somewhere around 20 days. So if you put everything together, all types of properties, both counties, we would sell all that inventory out in basically 3 weeks. And that's pretty phenomenal. The purple line is the dividing line between 2021 on the left and 2020 on the right. And that's because we do this by the week. Week 1 is the first week in this year, 2021. And obviously we don't have week 41 and 43, et cetera, for 2021. So we're showing last year's data. And that's why there's this discontinuity, because next data point would be way up here. That's going to drop way down here as we pass through the year. And that's why it's flagged. Anytime the DUI is below the red, you're in a seller's marketplace. The further below the red it is, the stronger the marketplace. Between the red and the blue is sort of the balanced marketplace. And even though I call it a balanced marketplace, and I call it balanced based on buyers and sellers have roughly the same power in negotiations. Each is a little concerned that they want the transaction to go together or fall apart, where right now the seller really doesn't care because they can put it back on the market and get another buyer. And then the next one is overbidding. This is a measure of how much pressure does the buyer feel, and then how much are they willing to overbid the price. And I do apologize for the graphics not being so clean this week. Something happened and I had to throw this together in the last 5 minutes. It will improve again. But the red line is the current data. So you can see it's the best of all these lines. This is the sale price to list price distribution for each given week going back in time. This is the best month we ever had, which was back here in April of 2018. And this is the worst month we ever had, which was December 2001. So you'd always expect the lines to be in between those 2 extremes, but you're getting towards the upper end now. Another key takeaway is the dotted lines back here are the oldest ones, followed by the dashed lines, which are harder to really see. And then the more bold, solid lines up here are the more recent weeks. Here is some appreciation numbers since everybody's worried about dollars. And what I've done is this is single family only in the different micro market areas. Anyway, I took the entire calendar year 2020 and came up with the median price for South County, East San Jose. And so the median price of everything that sold during 2020 were these numbers here. And then I looked at what the median was for just the past week, April the 10th, April 17th, and April 24th. So you can see the general trend, especially it's up, which means you're having appreciation. But there's also some fluctuation because if you look at South County, you're at 21.5% and then down to 20.5. That isn't property values fluctuating. That's just what properties happen to sell, the mix of that particular week. So you have to look at the general trends. If you look at the moderate low, which are Santa Teresa, Blossom Valley, Milpitas, and North Valley, 18.6 up to 19.5, down to 18.6. That doesn't mean homes are depreciating. But overall, if you look at this, you can see in Santa Clara County, single family homes, maybe we're somewhere around 15, 16% appreciation over last year's median. And that's pretty significant because the median, we had the COVID disruption. So you had less sales at the beginning part of the year. But if it was evenly distributed, the median price would be July. And so you're not even to July yet. And you're talking about 16% appreciation in less than a year. Now, in reality, because January, February, March tend to have low closings, and then we were shut down, the median volume is probably much closer to September. So if you say this median price probably happened sometime in August, September timeframe, and you're talking about 16% appreciation now in April, that's just almost outrageous. But that's what we have. We have this huge discontinuity every year at the beginning of the year in Silicon Valley. And then below that is San Mateo County prices. And then this is the breakdown to show you the difference, but that's the recap. So what I'll do is pause, see if anyone has any questions, and then I'll go into some of the details.
Richard, what is that 17 in red?
We'll get to that right now.
Oh, okay.
All right, so if that was the question, I'll answer that question. The 17 in red is DUI, days of unsold inventory, based on 5 weeks in Santa Clara County. It's in red because that is the fastest marketplace. And what we're showing is in the last week, it slowed down a little bit at 18 days. But the difference between 18 days and 17 is insignificant. And when you're looking at 1 week of data, it's so small, it just fluctuates. So the concept here is you look at the active inventory. So last week, you had 716 single family homes in Santa Clara County available. This week you're at 730. So we've come up, we spent a lot of part of this earlier year in the 600s. So, inventory is growing, but it normally grows until about the middle of July. So the fact that it's increasing would be expected. And then this is the single family in San Mateo County, and then obviously condos and townhouses. Then you jump down, instead of going from previous week to this week, you look at 1 week sales and 5 week sales. So these are offers that were accepted. So in the last week, we did 284 transactions in Santa Clara County. And in the last 5 weeks, we did basically 1,500. So if you take 1,500 divided by 5, we're averaging 300 sales a week. This last week, we only did 284. It's a drop of 16. That's pretty insignificant. So, in San Mateo County, 630 is a 5 weeks, and you divide that by 5 real quick, somewhere around 120, 130 sales. So it's right at the normal. Same concept over here. Divide that, you're right at 40, you're at 36. So now you can see the breakdown between the offers. And then the key thing is down here is of days of unsold inventory. So the takeaway is Santa Clara County single family homes is the most competitive right now at 18 and 17. And I would rely on the 17. I would use the 5 week because that's the more stable index, just because you're looking at a larger time set, a bigger data set. And also keep in mind that, you're talking about 1,500 homes, so that's quite a lot, but there's a lot of variation in single family homes within Santa Clara County. And when you get down to 1 week, it's only 284. So that's why I do 5 week data. 5 week data sort of lines up with a month. A month is 30, 31 days. 5 weeks is 35. A lot of the transactions that we're supposed to close in 1 month get delayed at the beginning part of the month. So then next comes San Mateo County's single family homes at 21 days. So if someone's working in San Mateo County, they're going to think their market's absolutely on fire. Santa Clara County is going to think their market's on fire. Santa Clara County is more on fire than San Mateo County. Then if you come over to Santa condos and townhouses, you can see that they are quite a bit slower. In Santa Clara County, 26, 27 days, and in San Mateo County, 30. But remember, I've said 30 to 40 days is a balanced marketplace. So 30 days is still a fast marketplace. And then this is the weighted average to both. So condo townhouses between both counties is at 27.8. Single family homes are at 18.4. It favors Santa Clara County because Santa Clara County has more inventory. Here's your days of unsold inventory in the graph. Historically, and It isn't true anywhere on this graph, but historically, San Mateo County is the faster county. And right now, you can see this whole time, and this is going back to before COVID, Santa Clara County has been going faster than Santa Mateo County. So right now, the fastest is County single-family homes, believe it or not, followed by condos and townhouses in Santa Clara County, and then finally by San Mateo County. But all three of these are way below the line at 40, which is up here, and balances from 40 to 80. So all three of these are in strong territory. It is interesting that the condos and townhouses were lagging behind here in the slowest, and now San Mateo County single family is the slowest. Here's the breakdown. And I'm going to work, when I set up this graph, I never expected to get below 24 and a half days of unsold inventory. And you can see basically everything up here is below 24 and a half days. So what I'm going to do is go back into the nuts and bolts of my processing and probably drop this down to something like 12 days. And I'll see what works out well in the math. And that way there will be some shading in this map, because this map right now is all one color except for Atherton Menlo Park, because it's at 54, so it has no color. So this has no color. The vast majority of this is saturated red. There is a slight difference here in Los Altos and Palo Alto, and if you look real carefully, you can sort of pick it up. Right through here, it's a slightly less pink, but it's really hard to tell, especially with the different shades of color in the background. Now what we're looking at is the individual components that make up the activity. This is the inventory. So this is inventory this year. And so you can see we started off the year above the yellow line, which would be above normal amount of inventory. Then it came down, and right now, since week 9, and we're right now in week 16, it's essentially been right on the normal level of inventory. And this is why I sort of harp on when people talk about there's a lack of inventory. It really is not a lack of inventory. There's a huge surplus in demand, and we'll get to that pretty rapidly. Here is the number of new listings. So you can see the number of new listings was quite a bit higher, I would say, all the way up until probably this week, which was just 2 weeks ago. And now it's basically getting pretty close. And even this week was slightly above normal. The reason this probably got closer together was just fluctuations. Easter was not too far ago, and holidays impact, and Easter moves around on the calendar. So if you look at it, and you can see how much fluctuation there is from week to week. So basically, new inventory coming on the marketplace has been higher than you would expect, which gives buyers more choice. But here is the huge obvious takeaway. Look at where the number of new offers is. It's been consistently above, it's way above. The only reason it's dropping down now is because we're changing from 2021 on the left side to 2020 this year. And so eventually we're going to catch up here, and then there won't be such a drop. But it's not this is a trend. This is 2021 data. This is 2020 data, and the two are not related. And I should come up with a better way of doing it. But since I want to plot to the 5-year median, which repeats, I'm just flipping it back over. I could flip this further down here and go further progressing to the right, which is what I'm toying with doing. Now we're looking at the number of closings. Nothing really significant here. But again, because you have more offers, you have closings. So this is essentially the previous slide, sort of murphed a little bit because some escrows are real quick and some are real long. But basically, if you have more offers, you have to have more closings. Now we're looking at the overbidding. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is it for buyers to overbid on an asking price just to try to get the house? So you can see up here, we're almost at 80 days because of shelter in place. Last week, this next week, we're like 58, but this is a year ago. And that's because you're closing them out. Then you're down to 47. Then you're down to like 30, 43. So there's a huge disparity. But again, this is not the trend you're looking at. You're basically up here and you're basically plateauing. But it's pretty darn hard to have more than 80% of the sellers getting above what their asking price is. Now, when you look at micro market areas, yes, there are some areas that get 95% of the buyers are overpaying, but then there's also areas where the homes aren't as in demand, and so when you balance everything together, it's hard to get that above 80%. In fact, I think 80.5% is the highest I remember seeing, or maybe it was 78.5. Anyway, it's right around 80%. It's hard to get above in a large area. Now we're looking at the frequency based on those 3 market areas, and you can just see they're just climbing. And it is a little bit interesting that even though condos are outperforming on the days of unsold inventory basis, single family homes in San Mateo County are outperforming them on the frequency of overbidding. And of course, the red line being Santa Clara County single family homes is doing the best. And you can see that happen actually even before the pandemic impact happened, because that's what this purple line is. This is what you look at when you see the things just chronologically going out in order. Now, this is the frequency mapped out, and here you can see there is some color change where right here on the San Mateo, Santa Clara County borderline is where it's pretty neutral. So you have a less intense color. You can see 48% of the sellers are getting their asking price. Up here on the coast, it's a little bit less intense red, but the rest of this area, again, is also real red. And that's because once you hit about 75%, it might be 74.5%, it becomes solid red. And you can see a lot of these areas are above 74. You can probably pick up the coast right here, 65.5. That's why it's down a little bit. Now we're looking at the magnitude of overbidding. The last one was frequency, how common. This is how much. And so you can see we hit 109% this week, and that gets pretty significant. We have been at 112% in the past, but we also now we're only a past shelter in place, which is an insult to the market. And I maintain anytime there's an insult, whether it be economic or in this case, a health emergency that impacts the real estate market, it's always a negative impact and buyers are always more cautious. So even though they're as frequently in their overbidding, they're not overbidding as much. They're overbidding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. They're not overbidding 25, 30, 40%. And when I say they're not, statistically, because today's data, I think there was one transaction that's at 155% of the asking price, but I have seen them over 2 times the person's asking price in the past. Here is the overbidding magnitude distributed. Now you can start seeing some color. So that's why I'm talking about going back and adjusting my scale on some of the other colors so you can see it. So you can see that the coolest area is probably right here on the border again between the 2 counties. The coast is pretty cool. South County is somewhat cool. East Central San Jose is somewhat cool. Saratoga is a little bit cool. But the affordable areas are bright red. And you can see the percentages over here. And once you hit 110%, you're solid red as well. There are more areas that are not solid red, which is why there's some color distribution. This is the current line, the bright red line up here. And you can see it's the highest line out of the recent weeks. Here's last week, the 17th, this burnt orange color. The 10th is this gray line. And then this line down here is April 3rd. So you can see there's some fluctuation, but the general trend is up. And you can see the general trend because the dotted lines down here are the oldest. And the dashed lines aren't showing up too well, but here's the dashed line. They appear to be thinner lines, but they're supposed to be dashed according to the key. And then you get up to the more recent stuff and they're all thicker lines. They're all towards the top. So that's all indicating that you're having a strong market. This is the best month we've ever had. That's the worst month we've ever had. Here's the same data, just more recent. By more recent, it's only going back 12 weeks instead of 20 weeks. So the dotted lines are real obvious. Again, the dashed lines really aren't showing up as dashed, but this blue line right there is a dashed line, this green line. And again, it's showing to me at least being just thinner. But again, the concept is the more recent lines are on the top end and the trend is up, which means buyers are getting more and more desperate. They're overbidding more with larger amounts each week that goes by. This graph is a little bit more nicely laid out. It's different than the others. The others were comparing week to week to week. This is comparing single family homes in Santa Clara County, and I'm comparing past Aprils. So my past Aprils are April 1st plus 35 days. So it'd be 30 days in April plus 5 days in May. So that's what all these lines are except for the red line. The red line is the current year. So we're only up through last night at midnight. So we're only up through April 23rd. So we have 12 more days of data to get before we can compare. But this allows you to see where we're doing. And unless there's some reason, and I don't think there is, but if there's some reason that people overbidding would be more likely to be closing at the first of the month, then this could be skewed. I don't see any reason rationally why there would be a distribution. And what I'd actually expect is, since we're going into the hottest time of the year for the marketplace, I'd actually expect this to drift up a little bit more. So I think what we're going to end up with, there's one line here that's dotted, which is like April of, I feel like 2004, because that sort of looks like a green right here. So if that's 2004, we're basically at the lower end where you're not capped by people's resistance. You're outperforming every year except for 2018. At the top end, you're not outperforming what I'm calling 2004, and you're getting close to, looks like 2017. Regardless, we're basically in the second best April we've ever had. And I think by the end of the month, we will end up in the second best month, April, that we've ever had. Here's color distribution. This one data point up here is clearly wrong. I don't know why the one zip code got pulled out and recolored. But basically, the redder the color, the higher the price. So you can see right along the San Mateo County, Santa Clara County is pretty expensive. Saratoga, Los Gatos comes in next. And then there's a lot that are tied for basically fourth place. Palo Alto, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Redwood City, San Mateo County. And the colors assigned by the median, which is this middle number. So you can go down and see, South County, the median price now is up to 1.2 million. East San Jose's, and this is single family homes, is 1,050,000. And then the number to the left that's lower is the lowest 10 percentile. And the number to the right is the 90 percentile, the most expensive. So real rapidly, you can see the price range for each of the different micro market areas. And the bluer the color, the lower the price for the median is. And then here we're comparing March data. This is just to give people a historical view. I can't really I don't feel comfortable bringing in April data yet, because some of the things you want to compare it to are the number of closings. And if you start comparing closings for 23 days to compare to 35, that's really not a fair comparison. I guess what I could do is report it on a day cost per days, because that would do the same thing. It would let you see where we're stacking up right now to past Aprils. And I will consider looking into that. And that should wrap us up. So these are the URLs as that people think of their question. To get to this meeting, you just type in tinyurl/RE Market Graphs 2021, Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. To get to the handout, which is not posted yet because I was trying to correct my issues, you add the word handout, the date code, which is 2021-04-24 for today's presentation. And I'll get that up shortly after the meeting ends. And then for the archive presentation, it's the root URL will take you to the entire channel. And then if you put in the date code, you'll get to the specific episode. With that, I'm open for questions. Have a great week. Thanks for joining.
Yes.